At 4:52 a.m., as first light flickered over the Pacific Ocean near the U.S.-Mexico maritime border, the radar screens on the USS Jason Dunham lit up. 6 small vessels were spotted, fast, silent, steaming northward with no lights or radio signals. They were not fishermen. They were cartel vessels, each worth millions of dollars, carrying more than $2 billion worth of drugs and weapons. For years, cartel empires had ruled the coasts unchecked. But with land routes blocked and air corridors monitored, the ocean had become their last highway and America's new frontier. Now the Navy was no longer patrolling, it was hunting. From above, P-8 Poseidons and MQ-9 Reapers swept the waves. On deck, MH-60R Seahawks were armed to intercept. What started as faint radar echoes is about to become the first clash in a $50 billion border war. Before we reveal the end of the story, subscribe now, because this ocean never stays quiet for long. And tell us what year you were born in the comments below. At 4:52 a.m., the radar screens aboard USS Jason Dunham showed 2 faint echoes drifting north. Routine at first, until 4 more contacts appear behind them, tighter, faster, and armed. 6 vessels in formation, no lights, no radio, carrying what intelligence later valued at over $2 billion in narcotics and weapons. Each hull powered by Yamaha 425 V8s, engines howling like jet turbines on water. They weren't fishermen. They were the spearhead of a $50 billion cartel navy, testing American resolve before dawn. From the sky, a P-8 Poseidon dropped sonar buoys like iron seeds across the waves. An MQ-9 Reaper locked its infrared camera on the lead boat, its heat trail cutting the ocean like a wound. On deck, MH-60R Seahawk spun up, rotors biting through mist, gunners loading GAU 21.50 caliber rounds. Command gave the order: track, contain, disable. This was no chase, it was a declaration. The United States Navy had just caught an empire moving in daylight. If you saw that on your radar, would you hesitate? Or would you fire first before the ocean turns against you? At 5:06 a.m., the situation moved from observation to combat readiness. Inside the command center of the USS Jason Dunham, red lights flashed as encrypted orders poured in from the 3rd Fleet headquarters in San Diego. The contacts were confirmed: 6 cartel vessels, at least 2 carrying mounted M240 machine guns, running formation toward U.S. waters. Operation Black Current was activated. A P-8 Poseidon climbed to 20,000 feet, dropping sonar buoys to cage the sea below. Above, an MQ-9 Reaper switched to infrared, tracing every heat flare from the cartel engines. On deck, the MH-60R Seahawk crews strapped in. Each helicopter carried precision disabling rounds and GAU 21.50 caliber guns, designed to shatter engines without sinking ships. The destroyer's Mk-38 25mm mounts came online, their barrels turning toward the horizon like watchtowers waking from sleep. Intel estimated the convoy's cargo, fentanyl, cocaine, and weapons, worth over $2 billion. Enough poison to wipe out every resident of Los Angeles twice over. The order was clear: intercept, disable, bring them in alive. As the helicopters lifted, radar icons merged into a single crimson cluster. This wasn't pursuit anymore. This was confrontation. If your enemy builds warships out of crime, do you treat them as smugglers or as soldiers? And when a $50 billion empire sails for your coast, how long before the ocean becomes your border wall? At 5:24 a.m., the Pacific stopped being water and turned into war. What began as faint radar echoes became 6 cartel vessels streaking north at 60 knots, slicing the ocean like scalpels across skin. Each hull carried an estimated $2 billion in narcotics and weapons: cocaine packed in watertight crates, fentanyl sealed in oil drums, rifles hidden beneath fuel tanks. Behind them stood a $50 billion empire, a global machine with its own navy, payroll, and foreign suppliers. To the Navy, this was no longer smuggling. It was confrontation with a corporation of crime. On the bridge of the USS Jason Dunham, alarms flashed red. The Combat Information Center roared to life. Orders came down from the 3rd Fleet in San Diego: intercept and disable all targets. Avoid casualties. Prevent landfall. Above, an MQ-9 Reaper streamed live infrared footage. Through its lens, the ocean glowed like a wound. 6 heat signatures, 6 targets, each burning with the temperature of greed. A P-8 Poseidon orbited overhead, its radar sweeping 200 miles of coastline, locking every echo into the destroyer's Aegis combat system. Below deck, sailors strapped in. This wasn't routine patrol anymore. This was history unfolding in real time. At 5:29 a.m., 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters launched into the dawn. Rotor blades tore the mist apart, the sound bouncing off the waves like thunder rolling under steel. Each Seahawk carried GAU 21.50 caliber guns and precision disabling rounds. Weapons engineered to shred an engine block without sinking a ship. Every bullet cost $50. Every burst could save a city. Down below, the cartel convoy adjusted formation. One boat accelerated head-on, another turned broadside. They were using military tactics, flanking maneuvers and distraction runs. Intelligence would later reveal their pilots were ex-special forces from Central America, hired for cash. When the first muzzle flash appeared, the sea lit up like lightning. The cartel had opened fire. Rounds from M240B machine guns tore through the air. Tracer fire hissed over the water. The Coast Guard interceptor CG-1132, trailing behind, took the first hit. Metal splintered, paint peeled, alarms screamed. No one was killed. Luck, training, or maybe both. The destroyer responded instantly. Its Mk 38 25mm autocannons came alive, bursts that carved red arcs through the fog. To anyone watching from shore, it looked like fireworks. To those on deck, it was survival measured in seconds. At 5:34 a.m., the first Seahawk engaged. Through its targeting screen, the gunner saw the lead boat's twin Yamaha 425 V8s glowing white-hot. He steadied his breath and squeezed the trigger. The gun rattled, the barrel smoked, and in less than 2 seconds, the engine exploded, a fireball rising 20 feet high. The boat spun, powerless, smoke pouring into the gray sky. The second Seahawk flanked left, targeting the escort boat. 3 clean bursts. The propeller shattered. Spray rose like shards of glass. From above, the Reaper recorded everything. Every hit, every spark, every voice shouting across the radio. The data streamed straight to command centers in San Diego and DC. Later, it would be studied frame by frame, a case study in modern maritime warfare, precision against chaos. By 5:39 a.m., 4 cartel vessels were crippled. 2 burned in place. But 2 more slipped away through the smoke. They turned south, heading for international waters, engines screaming. The Poseidon's radar tracked them to the edge of range, their wakes cutting the ocean like fleeing shadows. The order was immediate: pursue. The USS Jason Dunham turned hard starboard. Its turbines groaned as the ship accelerated to 30 knots. Choppers refueled mid-air. Drones pivoted. Interceptors held formation. Every man and woman aboard knew, if those boats escaped, the Empire's command chain would survive. This wasn't about stopping cargo. It was about cutting the head off a $50 billion monster. At 5:44 a.m., the chase turned brutal. The cartel boats dumped barrels of fuel, igniting the surface. Flames rolled over the waves like liquid fire. Through that burning wall, the Navy pressed forward. Air against speedboats, David against Goliath, but this time David had sensors, satellites, and steel. The air stank of oil and salt. Gunfire echoed across the sea. Each tracer line reflected off the water like lightning bolts in reverse. Above, the Reaper circled endlessly, its lens unblinking, its silence louder than any roar. At 5:49 a.m., 1 Seahawk dove through the smoke. The gunner fired again. 3 bursts, precise, mechanical. A cartel engine erupted, the vessel spinning out of control. The second boat, seeing it fall, veered east into open water. It was running blind now, dragging smoke and fire like a wounded animal. On the destroyer's deck, sailors cheered, but no one celebrated yet. The Empire still had 1 pulse left. 1 final boat carrying encrypted drives, payroll lists, and comms data that linked the entire cartel navy. Lose it, and the Empire survives. Catch it, and $50 billion in shadow networks collapses overnight. At 5:53 a.m., radar contact flickered, lost for 3 seconds, then regained. The final boat was less than 5 miles from international waters. If it crossed that line, the Navy would need political clearance to fire. The countdown began. 5 miles. 4. 3. Engines on the USS Jason Dunham howled. Every screen in the Combat Information Center glowed red. The P-8 Poseidon dropped flares to mark the target. A Reaper drone fed thermal visuals to the Seahawk's targeting computer. The pilot whispered, "Locked." At 5:57 a.m., the destroyer lined up for one last shot, not to sink, but to stop. The Mk-38 fired a single perfect burst. The round struck the engine housing. Flame, smoke, silence. The last cartel boat slowed, shuddered, and died on the water. The Pacific fell quiet again, but only for a heartbeat. No one spoke. No one smiled. The air smelled like fuel and victory. At 5:59 a.m., the commander radioed the fleet. All targets disabled. Boarding teams' inbound applause rippled quietly through the deck. It wasn't triumph yet. Not until they confirmed what was inside that final vessel. Beyond the smoke, helicopters circled. Waves glowed orange in the sunrise. The Empire had been wounded, not destroyed. The sea still held its secrets. The next 20 minutes, the last chase, the discovery, the strike that would cripple the cartel's navy, those belonged to Chapter 4. At 6 a.m., the ocean still burned. The final cartel vessel drifted through the smoke, its engines coughing black clouds, dragging the shredded flag of a $50 billion empire. Inside the command center of USS Jason Dunham, every radar console glowed red. The last target was escaping, less than 3 miles from international waters. The destroyer pushed to full throttle, turbines screaming at 30 knots. Above, the P-8 Poseidon locked its sensors, while 2 MH-60R Seahawks dropped low over the waves, rotors slicing mist like razors through fabric. One Seahawks gunner steadied the GAU 21.50 caliber and fired. 3 bursts, clean, controlled. The cartel boat's right engine exploded, a plume of flame tearing across the water. The second Seahawk fired flares to blind return fire. The ocean flashed white and orange. Sunrise and gunfire blended into one. At 6:07 a.m., the cartel's final captain gave up. His crew tossed rifles and M240B mounts into the sea. The interceptors CG-1132 and CG-1189 closed in fast. Boarding teams in body armor climbed aboard, securing the deck. What they found was staggering. Encrypted drives, sat phones, and ledgers mapping the cartel's maritime network. 12 refueling bases, 3 hidden shipyards, and over 400 registered smuggling routes. By 6:19 a.m., the Pacific went quiet. No American casualties. $2 billion in cargo seized. 6 vessels neutralized. One empire crippled by precision. Later that night, data from those drives guided coordinated strikes that wiped 40% of the cartel's naval capacity in under 7 hours. For the first time in years, the ocean belonged to order again. When the line between crime and war disappears, who defends the shore? And if discipline can destroy an empire at sea, what would happen if that same precision was brought to every border on Earth? At 7 a.m., the smoke had cleared, but the war had only changed shape. The seized cartel data told a story of scale few could comprehend. Over 400 maritime routes, 12 refueling depots, and 3 covert shipyards stretching from Baja to Central America. A machine valued at $50 billion, moving with the precision of a multinational corporation. Except its currency was blood. Inside the operations room at Fleet Cyber Command, analysts decrypted the drives recovered by USS Jason Dunham. What they found sent shockwaves through Washington. The cartel's digital infrastructure was managed through offshore servers in Dubai, Hong Kong, and Panama. The same networks used by global shipping companies. They weren't traffickers anymore. They were a shadow navy. By 9 a.m., counter-operations began. MQ-9 Reapers and P-8 Poseidons formed a permanent surveillance grid across the Pacific. Unmanned surface vessels, the Navy's new Sea Hunter class, joined the patrols, cutting cost by 60% while expanding reach by hundreds of miles. Every sensor, Every radar ping, every sonar buoy now fed into an AI fusion center that could predict routes before engines even started. The result, within 6 months, cartel maritime incursions dropped by 70%. The empire still existed, but it no longer ruled the water. The ocean had turned from their highway into their trap. At sea, deterrence is measured not in battles fought, but in silence earned. America had turned precision into power and vigilance into peace. So ask yourself, if a nation can dismantle a $50 billion empire at sea, what excuse remains for letting smaller wars rage on land? Every battle tells a story, but this one tells a warning. At dawn on that day, the U.S. Navy didn't just intercept boats, it intercepted an idea. That greed can build empires faster than governments, and that silence on the water doesn't always mean peace. A $50 billion cartel navy challenged a nation's sovereignty, and in less than 1 hour, discipline, training, and technology turned the tide. That's the lesson written in Salt and Smoke. Precision always defeats chaos. But beyond the radar screens and missile locks lies a deeper truth. Security isn't just the job of soldiers or sailors. It's the result of awareness, of people who understand that freedom costs vigilance. Every radar ping, every drone launch, every boarding at sea is paid for by men and women who believe that safety isn't given. It's earned, again and again. Because the moment we stop watching, someone else takes the horizon. Maybe that's what this video should remind you of. Not just the battle, but the balance. Technology and courage, strategy and sacrifice. The sea remains vast, but tonight, it belongs to those who dare to hold the line. Now I want to hear from you. What year were you born? And do you believe your generation still understands what vigilance means? Type it in the comments. If this story made you see the ocean differently, hit subscribe and join us for the next mission. Because somewhere out there, another storm is already forming, and we'll be here to face it together.